Welcome to the Futurist Exclusives Top 10 Moments in Banking. Here we go. Number 1, the Knights Templar. In 1099, the Christian armies of the Crusade finally wrestled control of Jerusalem from the occupying Muslim forces. Following this victory, groups of pilgrims from across Western Europe started wanting to visit the Holy Land. But many of them were robbed or even killed as they crossed through Muslim-controlled territories during their journey. Around 1118, a French knight named Hugues de Payens created a military order along with 8 relatives and acquaintances, calling it the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. With the support of Baldwin II, the ruler of Jerusalem at the time, they set up their headquarters on the city's sacred Temple Mount and henceforth became known as the Knights Templar. In 1139, Pope Innocent II issued a papal bull that allowed the Knights Templar special rights. Among them, the Templars were exempt from paying taxes, permitted to build their own private chapels, and were held to no one's authority except the Pope's. The Knights Templar set up a prosperous network of banks and gained enormous financial influence. Their banking system allowed religious pilgrims to deposit assets in their home countries and withdraw those funds in the Holy Land. They even minted their own coins. At the height of their influence, the Templars boasted a sizable fleet of ships, owned the Mediterranean island Cyprus, and served as a primary bank and lending institution to a broad range of European families. Included in those were monarchs and nobles, especially when these wealthy elite wished to move cash around Europe and beyond. We could say they were the first armored guards of money transportation. Number 2, the Bancos. If you're familiar with the writings of Shakespeare, you'll likely know the play The Merchant of Venice. In the play, a young Venetian of noble rank, Bassanio, approaches his friend, a wealthy merchant named Antonio, to help fund him to the tune of 3,000 ducats so he may woo the beautiful and wealthy heiress Portia of Belmont. A moneylender named Shylock agrees to lend the money to Antonio, whose assets are deployed overseas on his trading ships, but in return for a rather unusual guarantee provision. If Antonio fails to repay the loan, Shylock was to be permitted to take a pound of flesh as payment. Now, the appearance of these moneylenders and traders around the ports and piazzas of Italy is common historical depiction in art and so forth. These money traders that provided credit and lending in marketplaces for traveling merchants were sometimes depicted as Jewish because of the religious beliefs in Italy at the time that prevented the use of usury payments. However, there's no evidence that moneylenders and traders were limited to Jews. They were from all over Europe and of varying religious persuasions. The Italian word for bench is banco, and so these moneylenders who sat in the marketplaces offering lending facilities became known as the bench sitters or the bancos. Over time, this description stuck, and we still use the term banco or banker to identify these individuals today. Number 3, the Medici Bank. Cosimo de' Medici is often considered the grandfather of modern-day banking, given that the first international bank and the defining template for the systems of banking that we have today pretty much came from the Medici Bank. The House of Medici was an Italian banking family and a political dynasty, the first that came to prominence under the guidance of Giovanni de' Bicci de' Medici and Vieri de' Cambo, a distant cousin of Giovanni. They were based in the Republic of Florence, or Firenze in Italy. The Medici Bank founding is usually dated to 1397, when Giovanni separated his bank from that of his nephew, Averardo. However, by the mid-15th century, it was the largest and most respected bank across Europe, with branches in London, Geneva, Pisa, Milan, Avignon, Bruges, Naples, and elsewhere. This led to the Medici family becoming one of the wealthiest families in all of Europe. Not only that, but they became the financial institution of choice for the other wealthy families, European royals, and, of course, the Catholic Church. The florin, which was the currency issued by the Medici Bank and named after their home in Florence, also became the preferred currency across Europe for a time. The Medici family produced 4 popes: Pope Leo X, Clement VII, Pius IV, and Leo XI, and 2 queens of France, namely Catherine de' Medici and Marie de' Medici, from 1600 to 1610. The Medici Bank's most long-lasting contribution to the world, however, and to the professions of banking and accounting, is the enhancement of the general ledger system. Specifically, the development of the double entry accounting system, tracking debits or credits or deposits and withdrawals, was invented by the Medicis. This system is still in use today. The oldest bank in the world today, Monte dei Paschi di Siena, was founded in 1472, just 6 years after the death of Cosimo Medici. Number 4, the first mortgage. Sir Thomas de Littleton was an English judge and legal writer born around 1407 and who lived into his 70s. His mother was the sole heiress to his grandfather's title as Lord of Franklin, Worcestershire, and his father was the chief prothonotary of the Court of Common Pleas, or the Common Law Court. During the reign of King Henry VII, Littleton started to author a series of treatises on tenure of land ownership as per common law structures. The treatises are considered today the first real textbook in respect to English property law. There was growing complexity in respect to landowners' rights, estate inheritance, and common law renting or leasing of properties in England at the time. King Henry II had tried to organize the legal courts of the land in the 12th century with some success, but 3 centuries later, the amounts of precedents and rules governing the law of property had grown considerably. Littleton gave legal clarity for the first time to early mortgage structures that had gained popularity over the preceding 200 to 300 years. The Latin term he used to describe these facilities was mortem vadium, or the dead pledge. This was where a landlord gave a loan to a lender who worked the land, earning income from the property. The pledge to pay interest on the loan for a period at the end of which the lender would also need to pay back the principal of the loan was this form of common law contract. The language Littleton used in his treatise was Normandy-based French, or Norman French. The Latin term was translated, or the Latin term vadium mortem was hence translated as gage mort, or mort gage, mortgage, the term we still use today. Number 5, the first central bank. The first central bank in the world was founded by royal decree in Sweden in 1668, 353 years ago. At the time, Sweden's royal or public treasury was managed by the Stockholm's Banko, or Bank of Palmstrack, founded in 1656 by John Palmstrack. But after the bank issued too many notes without sufficient collateral, the bank subsequently collapsed. Palmstrack was initially sentenced to death, but later received royal clemency. On September the 17th, 1668, King Charles XI transferred the rights of Stockholm's Banko to operate a bank named the Rikens Bank, or the Bank of the Estates of the Realm, and appointed the Parliament of the day to manage its operation. It wasn't officially until 1897 that the Riksbank, through an act of Parliament, actually became the central issuing authority and Bank of Sweden. But this was probably merely a formality recognizing its operating role in the Swedish economy. Today, Riksbank is the oldest central bank in the world and one of the 3 oldest banks still in operation. The first bank mainframe, number 6. In 1950, Bank of America led the world in the use of processing of paper checks. But all of these checks were manually processed by hand. An experienced bookkeeper of the time was said to be able to post 245 account entries per hour, or roughly 10,000 entries per week. B of A's checking accounts at the time were growing at the rate of 23,000 per month. This led to a situation where banks had to close earlier and earlier just to be able to manage the volume of checks that needed processing each day. By the mid-1950s, branches were closing at 2 p.m. because of this batch processing problem. Stanford Research Institute, or SRI, was contracted by B of A to work on the development of the first computer that would automate the check processing infrastructure of the bank. eliminating the growing operational constraints that the popularity of checks was producing. You might recognize the name SRI. They're the same team responsible for Siri on the Apple iPhone. SRI started working on a mainframe computer that could handle the task for Bank of America. The project was named IRMA, or Electronic Recording Machine, for the accounting department. And the mainframe computer that SRI and General Electric went on to produce for B of A was so successful, it's credited as key to B of A becoming the world's largest bank by 1970. The final ERM computer contained more than 1 million feet, 304,000 meters of wiring, 8,000 vacuum tubes, 34,000 diodes, 5 input consoles with the magnetic ink readers, 2 magnetic memory drums, the check sorter, a high-speed printer, a power control panel, a maintenance board, 24 racks holding 1,500 electrical packages, 500 relay packages, and 12 magnetic tape drives for 24,000-foot tape reels. The machine weighed about 25 tons and used more than 80 kilowatts of power and required cooling by a complex air conditioning system. It started operation in 1953, but the development of IRMA continued until September 1955, when B of A froze the design. By 1970, IRMA could handle about 750 million checks annually, with one notable design constraint. Bank accounts were sorted alphabetically in the 1950s by a customer name, but IRMA wasn't sophisticated enough to enable sorting by name for the management of the ledger. So SRI engineers proposed an individual account number or sort code for each of the bank accounts in the system. This was the first time in recorded history that we used bank account numbers. Number 7, the first credit card. The use of credit cards originated in the United States during the 1920s, when oil companies and hotel chains began issuing cards to customers to enable them to make purchases at their company's outlets on account. However, the first universal credit card, which could be used at multiple different establishments, wasn't introduced until 1950 by the company known as Diners Club Incorporated. The first competitor to Diners in those days, known as a travel and entertainment card, was introduced by the American Express Company in 1958. These carried typically an annual subscription fee and were billed monthly for the expenses that they put on the card. A little known fact is that the magnetic stripe used on early credit cards, and that accounted for more than 50 billion transaction swipes per year at the end of the 20th century, was actually invented by IBM for the CIA. Forrest Parry is the engineer credited with first affixing a piece of magnetic tape to a plastic card for the purpose of data storage. The cards were intended to be used by the CIA for identification of their staff at the Langley operations, providing a high level of security and access control. The story goes that Perry could not figure out how to get the strip of magnetic tape to stay adhered to the plastic card. Glues would either prove inefficient or would warp the tape so it was no longer usable. When he mentioned this problem to his wife, who happened to be ironing clothes at the time, she suggested that he try using the iron to melt the strip onto the plastic card. That's what he did, and the Mag Stripe was born. IBM went on to become a pioneer in the use of this technology in the 1960s. Number 7, the first ATM machine. John Adrian Shepard Barron is generally credited as inventing the world's first ATM. It is said that he conceived the idea for a self-service machine dispensing cash whilst lying in his bath. He was considering the problem of bank opening hours because he'd just recently visited a branch just after closing hours, finding himself unable to withdraw money. Shepard Barron has said that he was inspired by the chocolate vending machines of the time. He's quoted as saying, "It struck me there must be a way I could get my own money, anywhere in the world or in the UK. I hit upon the idea of a chocolate bar dispenser, but replacing chocolate with cash." He pitched this idea then to a manager of Barclays Bank in the UK, reportedly over a pink gin. The first De La Rue automatic cash system, De La Rue being the company Shepard Barron worked for, was installed outside the Enfield branch in the north of England in June of 1967. It was branded as Barclay Cash. Reg Varney, a famous British TV actor of the time, was enlisted to carry out the first withdrawal. A second device was installed in Zurich in November of that same year, but it was branded as Geldautomat, a name that is familiar to many Europeans still to this day, as that's the branding often used on ATM machines. ATM aptly is named the automated teller machine for its ability to carry out one of the primary teller roles that were in the 1960s, dispensing cash from a bank branch. The early ATMs were pretty high tech, actually. The account holder used a one-time paper token, similar in size to a paper check, and entered a PIN number. The PIN number identified the account holder, and the paper token was impregnated with a radioactive compound of carbon-14. This radiation was detectable by the machine and matched to the individual PIN number. And why 4 digits for a PIN? Well, Shepard Barron originally proposed 6, but his wife said 6 was too many to remember. The first ATM in the US wasn't installed until later in September 1969 for Chemical Bank in Rockville Center, New York. Number 8, the first fintech. Now, Reuters launched in 1851 and today claims to be one of the oldest fintechs in the world, predating the Panic of 1873, the Great Crash of 1929, and the most recent crisis of the global financial crisis in 2008. But their ticker technology used in early stock market trading is not what we're talking about today. The first global fintech based on the use of the internet technology as a foundation of its operating principles was, of course, PayPal. Today, the total addressable market of fintech companies is more than $6 trillion globally and has been growing roughly by one third annually over the last decade or more. The internet and the subsequent development of smartphones defined a class of unregulated technology companies that unbundled the functions of modern-day banking and financial services marketplaces. Unlike financial technology companies in the 1990s, who were just vendors supplying technology solutions to the banking sector, who also called themselves fintech, these companies generally were privately funded technology companies that operated to replace banks. The startups who have become unicorns and household names for banking and lending capabilities now increasingly face new regulations and licensing, but they remain largely technology-first companies who do banking, not banks that use technology. And this is the differentiation in the definition. PayPal was founded by Max Levchin, Peter Thiel, and Luc Nosek in December of 1998 as a company called Confinity. Originally, this company was focused on security software for handheld devices. Confinity then pivoted to the operation of a digital wallet, which would seem more profitable. This wallet was announced and launched as PayPal in mid-1999. In March of 2000, roughly 12 months later, Confinity was then acquired by the company XCOM, an internet banking company founded by Elon Musk in the year of 1999 also. In October 2000, Musk decided to shelve the internet banking business of XCOM to focus purely on internet payments and money transfers. At the same time, Peter Thiel was appointed CEO of XCOM and the company was renamed to PayPal. PayPal went public in 2002, but in October of 2002, eBay went on to acquire PayPal for $1.5 billion. Today, their market cap is roughly $350 billion. Number 10, mobile wallets. Mobile or digital wallets are nothing new, as we can see by the PayPal story alone. The first operational mobile wallet was in fact introduced in 1997 by none other than Coca-Cola. In Helsinki, Finland, Coca-Cola introduced a Coke vending machine that allowed customers to buy their drinks via an SMS text message. Google Wallet then introduced their wallet in 2011, making it the first major technology company to allow broad access to a mobile wallet feature and the first to use near-field communications technology, Tap to Pay. But at the time, this was limited to a single model Android phone and of course point-of-sale terminals that were able to accept the NFC signals. Things really started to change in 2014 when the Chinese technology company Tencent launched their WeChat Red Envelope. During Chinese New Year celebration, it's quite common for friends living in China and the Greater Bay Area, relatives and co-workers, to exchange Lai-C packets, these red packets that hold small cash gifts. Red, of course, is the color of luck, joy, and happiness in China, so the red packets over time came to symbolize lucky gifts of cash given to your friends. WeChat was the first mobile wallet that allowed electronic red packets, gifts of money to be exchanged across the internet framework. Baidu and Alibaba followed suit soon after. Soon after Tencent launched their own wallet service. Now, once Chinese consumers had electronic money gifted to them, they, of course, needed places to spend it. This created a massive boom in interest around mobile payments in China, and QR codes were used to accelerate the adoption of this technology for both payers and merchants. In 2017, the total number and value of payments across the Tencent WeChat Pay and Ant Financial Alipay mobile payments network exceeded that of the total value of all plastic cards transacting globally for the first time. Today, mobile wallets account for almost twice the annual payments made by debit cards, credit cards, or gift cards around the world. What do you think about our top 10 list of banking moments? Are there any you think we should have included? Leave us some thoughts down in the comments.